The anime started with loner boy Haruka, who hides near some goblins. The idiot blows his cover by stepping on the smallest twig, ever so the goblins chase after him. Haruka smiled with utter confidence as he jumps into the air and all the goblins fall into his trap. Haruka is very pleased with himself as he's doing a great job surviving alone in another world. A look back shows how Haruka got himself in this situation. Haruka has always been a loner, and he explains to us that it's because he just never wanted anything to do with his classmates. He didn't like any of them, and they would just get in the way of what he finds most important, and that's reading. As Haruka looked around his classroom, the divide among the students was very clear. There were the popular girls, the delinquents, the jocks, the class rep, the nerds, and the others category. Haruka didn't belong to any of these groups, but he wouldn't have it any other way. This was when a magic circle appeared out of nowhere. Haruka was excited because it was just like the ones he had read in manga, but he remembered that going to another world is a pain in the butts. The heroes in the manga always ended up having to be around a bunch of people, but that sounded like torture to Haruka. He tried his best to get out of the classroom, but it didn't go so well. All the other students panicked as the magic circle expanded, but Haruka cleverly escaped through an air vent. Unfortunately for him, the magic circle chased him up there, and he found himself in the generic white void place. How look exactly what to expect from reading so much manga. He wondered where the typical king was and when his daughter, who was beyond the reach of any nerd, would show up. Some old guy frantically signaled to him, so Haruka realized that this guy was some sort of god. It turns out that the teleporting was first come first served, so Haruka's classmates were teleported already and Haruka was left behind. Haruka was allowed to pick his status and skills just before being sent to his new world. A giant board appeared with all the options, but Haruka was disappointed about something. This was the first time the old god summoned so many people, so all of the cheat skills were already taken, and only the worthless ones were left. Haruka took a look at his options, but they were all terrible. One skill was just being able to hold a stick. Some other ones were just good overall general health and walking. Haruka made himself feel even worse by seeing some of the overpowered skills that he missed out on, like 4-element magic. Back to the bad stuff, Haruka found titles like Shut In and Neat. Haruka demanded for the old god to give him more options because he wouldn't even be able to pass the first village with the ones he had to choose from. The old god became fed up, so he decided to just give Haruka all the remaining skills at once. Haruka gained all the leftover worthless skills, and he was teleported. In the new world, Haruka is supplied with a bag that can hold unlimited items. Haruka gears up and checks his stats. His stats screen tells him to roll some dice, and he remembers reading about the skill. It allows him to allocate points by rolling dice. Haruka curses the old guy for giving him such a useless skill, and he rolls the dice. He rolls a double M, but Haruka has no clue what that means. He assumes the worst as he thinks that M stands for masochist. However, his stats screen just tells them to choose which stat he wants to add to. Haruka doesn't think that raw stats will help him survive with his terrible abilities, so he chooses to put the points into luck. His strategy is to completely ignore a balanced build, and instead he will just max out luck. Just then, Haruka realizes that the M stood for max because his luck stat is now maxed out. Haruka surprised when he notices that he has 2 extra skills and C of useless abilities. He assumes that it's because he was summoned alone. Haruki's loner title means that he's the loner with no friends and he cannot form a party. His servitude skill allows him to command others, and it was given to him because of his loner status. That's pretty cool, but it also means that Haruka has to say goodbye to his dreams of having a harem. Haruka wonders where all his classmates are, but it doesn't matter because he can't party with them anyway. Haruka decides to just begin his journey, and he wants to start by securing a base of operation. It's pretty hard to see through the forest, so Haruka is worried about a monster showing up. He wonders if he has a skill that could be useful, but the only one that comes to mind is the skill that allows him to doze off. Haruka tries on the contact lenses he has in his bag and finds that it's actually super useful. It allows him to see a bunch of extra stuff, and he finds that it grants him the appraisal skill. This leads to Haruka finding an edible mushroom that draws out latent abilities. His bottomless bag lets him take as many as he wants, so he apologizes to it for thinking it was useless earlier. Haruka chugs down some water, but he hears something in the distance. This sound leads him to a cave, and he prays that he doesn't find a monster. Haruka's bag came with a bunch of camping stuff, so he decides to make this cave his base. He uses temperature magic to light some twigs on fire, and determines that the leftover skills are actually pretty useful. Haruka checks his stats again and finds that his temperature magic leveled up, which unlocks fire magic. Haruka worries about what he will do if a monster appears because he can only smack it with the sticker right now, but he just ends up falling asleep. The next day, Haruka wakes to find everything is okay. He has items that repel monsters and his shut-in title protects his living space. Haruka can now use fire magic to start fires, so he cooked himself some breakfast. He had some beef jerky in his bag and he had some of the mushrooms he found the day before. The food is delicious. Haruka is very grateful for his villager starter bag. It's more than just a villager bag though, so Haruka thinks it's more like a bag for a survivalist. Haruka heads out to find more food for later, but he knows that the main concern right now is how to protect himself from monsters. Just then Haruka finds the last thing he wanted to see: two goblins. They are small fry monsters, but their stats are higher than expected. Haruka wonders if he can even win, but he realizes that it doesn't matter because you will have to learn to deal with monsters one way or another. Unfortunately, Haruka doesn't think that his stick will do much. Haruka does have a skill called wrapping, which allows him to wrap all sorts of things with magic and grants various effects. This seems to make his stick stronger, so Haruka is determined to surpass everyone even without any cheat skills. Haruka begins his first attack ever and he brutally beats down on the first unsuspecting goblin. The second one tries to attack him, but its moves are pretty lame and Haruka easily dodges them. Haruka somehow knows how to use a new power, and he eliminates the second goblin. Afterwards, Haruka is pleased after winning his first battle, and he heads back to base. He brought back one of the clubs that the goblin used, but he determined that his stick is still better. Haruka is excited to find that he leveled up and all his stats more than doubled. His cane mastery leveled up as well, which is strange because he just swung his stick around a few times. Haruka got magic confusion as well, which probably came from him enchanting his stick with magic. His calisthenics went up as well because Haruka has never missed a morning exercise. Haruka is exaggerating quite a bit though, as he has only been in this new world for 2 days. Later, Haruka is tired of eating mushrooms already. He would rather eat meat, but he knows that he would be schooled by the class rep for being ungrateful. With his meal done, Haruka decides to try out and enhancing himself. This magic infusion enhances his physical and magical defenses. Haruka's appraisal skill has also reached level 2, but he wonders why it's showing a bunch of question marks on all his stuff. Haruka decides not to overthink things and he leaves. He celebrates as the force blesses him with something already, but he realizes that it's just another mushroom. Haruka searches for meat that might grow out of trees, but he remembers that he's supposed to be practicing his magic. Haruka finds that his enhanced body is much lighter, so much so that it feels like he is teleporting. That isn't all, as his dexterity is insane now too. Haruka finds a more powerful goblin, but he easily defeats it. He takes out another, so he is confident that he could defeat even a group of 3 of them now. Haruka actually runs into a group of 3 goblins, but he's a coward, and he decides that he has had enough fighting for the day. Haruka recaps his day, which consisted of his goblin battle and magic studying at night. On day 5, Haruka succeeded in defeating a goblin with the single strike, and he decorated his base with some fancy stuff he made with magic. Haruka is once again pretty pleased as his life in this new world is starting to come together. That night, Haruka chases a meaty rabbit as he's desperate to eat some meat. Just then Haruka detects her presence and he instantly determines that it's not a goblin. It turns out to be his classmates, but Haruka is disappointed to see that it's the delinquents. Haruka would rather not get involved with them, but he senses that another group is in the other direction. His clairvoyance still allows him to see who it is, but he's horrified to see that it's the popular girls. The jocks are also rapidly approaching. The nerds are nearby too, but after talking to them from time to time in his old world, Haruka would rather take a pass on seeing them. That just leaves the class rep and her friends. Haruka knows that it would be best if he had some friends in this harsh world, and he has known the class rep since grade school. Haruka decides to at least say hello, but he stops himself. He realizes that he feels really free and isolated right now. He can live the way he wants without anyone butting in, and he wouldn't exchange that for anything. Haruka makes his final decision, which is to conquer this new world all alone. He then ducks into a bush to keep himself hidden as the delinquents approach, and one of them could have sworn he heard someone in this direction, and he's closing in on the bushes Haruka is hiding in, but as he checks inside all he finds is the bunny, so he and the others continue walking. Haruka is relieved that they didn't find him, but he decides to follow them so he can figure out if they are planning something. He listens closely as the delinquents have a highly intellectual conversation about their class VP's chest, and Haruka is disappointed because he thought he would at least learn something useful from them. With no laws to stop them, Haruka is a little worried about what the delinquents might do to the girls, but he's sure the class rep will put a stop to whatever they are trying to do because she always does. However, Haruka soon overhears the delinquents talk about using a mirror called Tenica phrase ability so they can do whatever they want. The delinquents then get up to head back to camp and Haruka can tell that they are up to no good, but he can't bring himself to intervene because that would require social interaction and he's firmly against that. He heads back to his cave and starts grilling some mushrooms, but then he notices something that completely devastates him. His loner skill just leveled up, meaning even his status board recognizes him as a loner. This is probably because he chose to avoid his classmates, but still it's not the worst thing that could happen. If anything, he would like to level up more because his overall level is still only 3. The main reason for this is that he has 2 skills that he can't level is Jack of all trade and dummy skills. To be honest, he's not even sure what the skills do. Jack of all trades probably means he will be good at most things he tries, but he will never be able to become a master any particular craft, and that's pretty straightforward. But as for the dummy skill, the best explanation Haruka can come up with is something to do with puppets, but he's not sure about it. He decides to give up on trying to figure out for now and just eat his dinner, but he still really wishes he had some meat. Haruka calls it a day and goes to bed for the night, but as he's trying to get some sleep, he hears a huge ruckus outside and he can't just ignore it, so he gets up to figure out what's going on. As he left his cave, he was expecting to see the delinquents up to no good again, but to his surprise it was actually the nerds this time. They are currently fighting a bunch of goblins and it looks like they are having a bit of trouble, so Haruka considers helping them out, but he changes his mind once he sees their stats. They've got skills that are way better than his and they are all level 16 while Haruka is still level 3. He figures they'll be alright without him, so he turns to walk away, but just before he leaves he spots 2 goblins sneaking up behind the group and the nerds are already struggling as things are so if they get attacked from behind and they'll be wiped out sure. Haruka is still on the fence about whether he should help them or not, but then he remembers the time the nerds shared their holographic Charizard with him, and he then decides that they are worth saving. He runs out of the bushes with a stick in hand and he easily one-shot both goblins in one swing. He then turns to the nerds and asks them if they are alright, and the nerds fine, but they're shocked to see Haruka out here. Once they've gotten reacquainted, the nerds thank Haruka for his help, but he's having a hard time communicating with them since he hasn't spoken to real people for a long time now. He eventually takes them all back to his place and the nerds are all amazed by how nice the interior is considering as a cave. Haruka explains that he learned a little earth magic and crafting to help with the remodeling, but the nerds still think it's impressive that he did all this by himself. Haruka prepares a drink for them all and asks why they rout in the middle of the woods so late at night. The nerds suddenly fall silent when the topic is brought up, and after a few seconds, they tell Haruka that they are actually on the run from the rest of the class right now. It all started after the class first got Ecchi here, and at first everyone was just surprised by everything that just happened, but they were soon faced with the reality that they are stuck here, and they started freaking out over it. A few of them were more calm about the situation, like the popular girls who seemed like they were more annoyed than scared, the jocks who were trying to figure out what to do but knew nothing about Ecchi, and the nerds who were totally within their element. The class rep was just as confused as everyone else, but she has the common sense to realize that crying in an unknown force is a good way to attract unwanted predators and get them all killed, so she tries to get everyone to quiet down. However, it was too late as a group of goblins had already found the class and the class rep has no idea how to handle these monsters, so she starts freaking out. Everyone else is freaking out as well, even the delinquents of the nerds know someone has to handle this, so they all activate their skills so they can take down the goblins. The gym bros join in to help and soon enough all the goblins have been defeated, but it still isn't safe to be out here. So the class rep gets everyone's attention and says they should all find somewhere safe to stay before they get attacked again. A little while later, the class settled on setting up camp by the river, and the nerds took it upon themselves to teach everyone how to survive in this world with all the Ecchi knowledge they possessed. The duties were evenly divided among all the members of the class and everything seemed like it was going well until the popular girls suddenly said, "Nah, we don't want to do any work." The class rep tried to convince them that the work was necessary and all they had to do was help set up the tents, but the girls just didn't want to bother with it, and since the popular girls weren't doing anything, the delinquents decided that they would be lazy as well, leaving the class rep and the nerds to do all the work instead. On top of that, the nerds went out of their way to handle all the monsters that would try to attack the camp, and while it seemed like a lot of work, they had to do this for their own sake. Back in the White Room, the nerds saw 2 particularly disturbing skills get chosen. One was the charm spell that grants control over people, and another troubling one was the puppeteer skill, which pretty much does the same thing. They knew that one of the delinquents possessed the puppeteer skill, so the nerds wanted to level up quickly in order to be able to defend themselves against the delinquents. However, at night the delinquents would go out and slay monsters as well, but only for the sake of leveling up so they can use their skills, and while the nerds eavesdropping on them, they began talking about how they will turn the girls into their slaves once they have enough levels to use their skills. The nerds realized that this would mean a lot of trouble, so they went to warn the class rep about it. However, just a few days later, the delinquents have leveled up enough to use their skills, and the class rep just so happened to be nearby, so they planned to make her their first victim. However, they ended up getting jumped by the nerds, and once they were down, their skills were sealed away so they wouldn't be able to cause any harm. Now the delinquents are basically powerless, and as you would expect, the girls didn't take it well when they found out about the plan the delinquents had made, so the delinquents were kicked out of the camp. That would have been the end of it, but the delinquents petty, so later that night, while the nerds were around and beat them up, the delinquents attacked the camp just to mess with everyone and ended up burning everything to the ground. Once there was nothing left, the delinquents retreated back into the forest, and by the time the nerds returned to camp, they were devastated to discover that all their hard work had been destroyed. The popular girls somehow blamed them for all the destruction and were giving them a really hard time for antagonizing the delinquents. The class rep stood up for them and reminded everyone that the nerds are the only reason they've been surviving out here so far, and the nerds appreciated the class rep having their backs, but they couldn't spend another minute and a camel full of such ungrateful people, which is why they all went on the run. After hearing the whole story, Haruka feels really bad for them, so he decides to host a feast of mushrooms for them that night. He actually enjoyed spending time with other people for once, but by the next day, the nerds had to leave because they plan on heading downstream to find a village and start their lives as adventurers. They offered to let Haruka join them because they consider him a friend, and while Haruka thinks of them as friends as well, he still has to decline their offer because he believes his trash skills would only hold the nerds back. With that said, he's also a bit worried about the situation of the class camp, mostly because the class rep is still there and she's the only other person in the class that he likes, so he decides to go check it out. Along the way, he randomly runs into a cobalt and the thing bites him a lot, but ultimately, he manages to kill it and continue his journey. By nighttime, he arrived at the riverside where the class camp should have been, but surprisingly the place is totally deserted. He assumes they must have moved somewhere else, so he uses one of his detection skills to pick up some footprints and follows them until he eventually comes across the popular girls. Of everyone in the class, Haruka hates dealing with them the most. She tries to turn around and head home, but the girls have already started chasing him. Haruka would have no trouble outrunning them, but he stopped dead in his tracks when he hears them say the word please. In all the years Haruka has known them, please has never been in their vocabulary, so something serious must have happened for them to be this desperate. He decides to talk to them after all, and the first thing that girls do is ask him if he knows where the nerds went. Haruka is hesitant to tell them because he thinks they just want to yell at the nerds some more, but on the contrary, the girls actually want to apologize to them. They now realize how much the nerds were doing for them, and they sincerely want to make amends for the way they treated them. But by now the nerds are alone gone, so there's no way the girls would ever catch up to them. To begin with, they can't make it out of the woods by themselves, and they can't defend themselves from monsters, so how do they intend to find the nerds? He asked them if they have the resolve to do whatever it takes to go apologize to the nerds, but the girls break down crying because they know that they'll die in no time if they are left out in the woods by themselves. They plead with Haruka to teach them how to survive out here. He is so stunned by their sudden request that he ends up agreeing to it without thinking. As a result, Haruka's subjugate ability activates, and all of a sudden the girls have become his subservient followers. Now all they do is blankly stare at him and finish off monsters whenever Haruka gets into a fight, and then they pull out the magic crystal and present it to him like puppies looking for praise. Haruka really isn't happy with how things are going, but for now he notices that one of the girls has a small injury on her arm, so he hands her a healing potion he made so she can recover. However, she just uses it on him instead. He's getting really sick of how the girls only do things for his benefit now, and he is really worried about how he's going to explain this to the class rep if he runs into her, and right on cue, the class rep just so happened to be walking through that part of the woods at the moment. Haruka is startled by the class rep screaming, but she reminds them that they have been friends since grade school. The other girls are with her, but the class rep is more concerned about what happened to the popular girls. Haruka doesn't know how to explain how they came under his control because he doesn't really understand how it happened either. Haruka comes clean and tells her that they have become his servants, but this makes the class rep furious. She points out that the domination skill is only for use on monsters, so Haruka tells her that it was just a mistake. None of the girls believe him, so Haruka decides that it's time for him to go, but the girls stop him. Our protagonist Haruka is just a loner, and he wishes that he could just go home alone. The class rep snaps Shimazaki out off Haruka's spell, and she decides to get answers from her. Haruka doesn't mind as he tries to escape, but the class rep tells him not to leave. As the girls discuss what happened, Haruka decides to practice expanding his home base. More specifically, how to make a basement. His training starts off well enough, but soon he finds that he has buried himself. The class rep helps them up and she explains that Shimazaki told her everything. She realizes that Haruka was just trying to help the girls, but Haruka doesn't even remember saying anything like that. All the girls thank him for being so kind, but Haruka just wants to go home. The girls pressure him to help them, and the class rep wonders what Haruka means by home. Haruka explains that he has a home in this new world, so the clueless class rep is shocked when she thinks that he was born here. Haruka reveals that he actually built his home, but she can't believe it because that's quite defeat. The girls have another meeting to discuss what they will do, and they wonder how many people can fit in Haruka's home. Haruka calculates that he can fit at least 240 people and maybe more if he takes out his luxurious furniture. The girls really get excited when they hear that Haruka has baths, and they wonder how he can be living in luxury when everyone else is suffering. The girls decide to ask him if they can stay with him for a day, and Haruka is shocked that high school girls want to stay overnight at his place. Haruka can't believe that they're being so scandalous, but the class rep points out that he's the only perv there. Haruka leads the girls to his house, and they are amazed to see that he even has a path that leads to it. It's so impressive that the class rep wonders if he even has a convenience store, but Haruka explains that he was going to make a pharmacy first. The girls arrive at his home exhausted, and Haruka welcomes them. Haruka has made a ton of upgrades to his home, and the girls can't believe how luxurious it is. Haruka of course directs them towards the kitchen, but the girls are more interested in the restroom. Our protagonist is shocked when they all disrobe and hop right into the bath, so he thinks that living too long in the forest has turned the girls into savages. Haruka is actually quite happy to finally be alone, but he knows the only loners could understand this happiness. The class rep arrives to thank him because the other guys left all the girls alone and they were worried. Being around Haruka has calmed them down, and so has all the amenities in his home. The class rep is upset because she couldn't do much for the group, but Haruka points out that she has done plenty. She didn't do as much as the nerds, but Haruka explains that those guys never went outside in the old world and they spent their entire lives preparing for this moment by playing World of Warcraft. The class rep feels much better, so she thanks Haruka, but she realizes something. After coming to this world, Haruka has a home food and he can even defeat monsters, so that makes him even weirder than their nerds. The class rep goes to sleep with the other girls, but Haruka doesn't think that he will be getting any rest tonight. The next morning, Haruka's woken up by a girl who tells him that breakfast is ready, but he just wants to sleep for a while longer. She asks Haruka to get up for her, but he doesn't think that's something she should be saying in this position. Haruka's stunned to learn that she has made fish for breakfast, and he almost knocks her unconscious. Haruka takes one bite out of the delicious fish and he cries because it's been so long since he has had anything so good. The class rep can't believe that he's getting so emotional from eating fish because he lives right next to a river, but Haruka explains that he hasn't been able to catch any fish himself. They are too fast and slippery, so he has just been watching all the fish while eating mushrooms by the river. One girl shows them how she uses lightning magic to stun a bunch of fish in the water all at once, and Haruka asks her to show him again. The girl prepares the attack again, but this time Haruka wraps the lightning magic with his packing skill. This allows Haruka to move the magic, and he uses it to stun and capture some fish. Haruka celebrates as he has also learned the lightning magic skill. He isn't really sure about how he was able to do it, but he explains to the girls that by using his packing skill on magic, he can get whatever elemental magic it is. This seems pretty overpowered to the class rep, so Haruka determines that even the worst skills have some use. It's pretty incredible to the class rep, but Haruka reveals that he just got stuck with all the worst leftover skills. The girls are planning to find a nearby town, but they want to level up first. Haruka agrees that they need to earn some levels if they want to continue hunting the nerds, but the gossip girls point out that they just want to thank them. Haruka agrees to help the girls level up, so he has them all tell him what level they are. He is shocked, however, when the girls are all over level 16 while he's still just level 7. Haruka tells the girls that their training will start with fighting some kobolds that just happen to appear. It's a group of easy level 3 monsters, so the girls are confident that they can take them out. Unfortunately, the girls are the ones that just end up getting knocked out. Afterwards, Haruka is happy that his Magic 10 is able to expand, but the girls have taken advantage of this by gathering there to have a review of their battle. The girls leave, but the purple-headed girl from earlier stays behind. She apologizes for her behavior in the morning and reveals that she was just testing Haruka. The other boys tried attacking her before, so she wanted to see if Haruka was the same as them. Haruka is totally different from them, though, as he gave the girls a place to stay, food to eat, and even taught them how to fight. She plans to wake him up for breakfast the next morning as well, and Haruka says goodbye to the fish girl. The next morning Haruka enjoys his breakfast and he overhears some of the girls planning to fight the kobolds again. The class rep arrives to tell them that they aren't ready and they need more training. After training against some goblins, the girls feel like they are ready for their rematch. Haruka is worried about them, and his worry is proven correct as some of the girls are already out and sleeping. Some of them are even faking like they are sick, so he determines that the classroom's training isn't very good. Just and hope is restored as a few of the girls team up to defeat the kobold. The girls celebrate and tell the kobolds that they won't be losing to them anymore. Haruka is more relieved than ever because this means that he will be able to go back to his loner life. Just then he is shocked when the class rep is happy because they can all go together with Haruka to the town. Moments later the girls prepare for their journey and Haruka has the purple-haired girl fill her bag as much as possible. The class rep says that they are going overboard, so Haruka decides that he will just have to leave purple hair behind. The girls begin their journey, but Haruka tells the class rep that there's no telling what might happen. He is optimistic and declares that they just need to keep their wits about them. Elsewhere in the forest, another student runs for his life. Eventually he trips over the tiniest pebble ever, and he is found by the person he was running from. He says that he doesn't have the skills that the person is looking for, and he begs for his life. The mysterious person doesn't listen to his pleas, and justice strangles him until he is no longer alive. Back in the forest, Haruka continues his journey out of the woods to escort the girls to the nearest civilization. But on their way they encounter a massive level 11 orc. Haruka tells the girls to stand back and watch how he fights so they can learn as well. With that he charges forward with his tiny baby stick while the orc swings its massive club down to smash him. But its surprise, Haruka suddenly vanishes from right in front of him. In reality Haruka is hiding behind a tree and laughing at how slow the work is. He remembers the nerds telling him that orcs have high resistance to physical attacks and can only be defeated by using magic. Haruka scrolls through his status screen to find good magic to use against the monster, and he notices that he has something called the Grand Magic. Haruka notes that he learned the wind, water, and earth elements by using the packing magic in various ways like vacuum cleaning and pulling the ground, and he becomes happy at how smart he is. Just then Orc breaks the tree he's hiding behind and starts attacking him. Haruka jumps back and tries to dodge everything and then gets behind the orc and strikes it with this tiny baby stick. However, to everyone's surprise, the orc takes a lot of damage and ends up hugging the ground with its last breath. Haruka thinks about how orcs are supposed to have high physical defense, and the girls look at him with the suspicious face as well. Haruka says that he will take the next one down using magic, just like how the nerds hold on to. The next time they come across an orc, Haruka creates a fireball in his hand and gently throws it at the monster's head. This makes it explode on the spot, and Haruka one-shot to another monster. Haruka wonders what's happening, and the girls complain because there's no way they can learn anything when he keeps one-shooting monsters. Later that night they all camp outside and enjoy some roasted mushrooms, while Haruka creates a trap using earth magic for everyone's safety. He thinks about how his tent has monster repellent and is equipped the presence detection magic as well, so the girl should be safe for the night. He starts planning their route for the next day, so he uses his map skill, which evolved from his appraisal and contact lens skills. He looks at it and thinks that they should follow along the river, but then he suddenly detects someone's presence. He notices that there are some humans walking towards them, and he worries that they might be the delinquents. However, to his relief, it turned out to just be the dumb jocks. Meanwhile, the class rep notices Haruka talking to them and decides to eavesdrop on them. Haruka asks the jocks what they're doing there and wonders if they were stalkers trying to check up on the girls while they were sleeping. He asked them if they're also creeps while being muscleheads, but they cry out and say that they are not. One of them says that they're not there for the girls, they're there for him. Haruka teases them by asking if they're like going to ditty parties, but they say they don't swing that way. After that, Haruka asks them why they were hiding from the girls, and they replied that it's because they can't trust anyone anymore. They explain that there's a skill that's much more dangerous than the puppetry and mesmerized skill. Haruka thinks that they must be talking about the hijack skill, which allows the user to steal other skills and abilities. The jocks say that the delinquents didn't say anything about the hijack skill, so that must mean they don't have it. However, that means that someone else has it, so they must be cautious of everyone. After hearing this, Haruka says that they must be stupid because they didn't consider the possibility that he might have that skill. However, they start smiling and say that if that were the case, then they would be really happy because they know that he's not a bad guy. They then asked him if he actually has it or not, and Haruka tells him that he doesn't have hijack, but he has the domination skill, which sounds even worse. They tell him that as long as he has all the weird skills, they won't have to worry because he will most likely just sit alone somewhere without harming anyone. After that, they say that they will keep an eye out for the delinquents in the forest, and they were just looking to warn Haruka about the hijack skill so he can stay safe. They then ask him to apologize to the girls on their behalf for not standing up to the delinquents earlier, and they walk away. Haruka sees them off by telling them to consult with the goblins if they're in trouble next time because they're both idiots, so they will get along well for sure. The next morning, Haruka tells everyone to prepare their equipment, and then they walk to the forest to look for some herbs before they leave. The class rep tells them that she knows about his talk with the jocks last night, and she apologizes to him. Haruka realizes that it's about the hijack skill, and he says that he knows that she is the one who has it. The class rep says that she asks the nerds to keep it a secret, but Haruka says that it was pretty obvious, but the jocks are too dumb to realize that. He tells her not to worry about it because they all trust her with that skill. That's why the nerds didn't steal it from her like they did with the delinquents. This makes the classroom really happy, and she starts tearing up. Haruka points out that she's been crying a lot since coming to this world, but the class rep says that it's because of him. Haruka freaks out and says that it's a false accusation and runs away. However, when he leaves, the class rep tells herself that it's because he makes her so happy. After that, they continue their journey, and Haruka decides to sell some fresh fruit juice on the way to cheer everyone up. One girl says that she doesn't have any money but would be interested in paying another way. However, the class rep scolds Haruka for being a pervert, and he stopped selling the juices, which makes the other girls weep about not getting any. They continue walking through the forest until Haruka spots the river. He tells the class rep that it should be safe to camp out here for the night and says that he will go on ahead to do some scouting as he dashes away. While running, he enhances his physical strength and uses weight magic to make himself lighter. He gets a good view of the forest from above, but then he realizes that he doesn't have a way to land safely, so he falls to the ground with his ass at 1 HP. Haruka then goes back to the camp and gets scolded by the class rep for being reckless. Haruka is a clever guy, so he tried to make up for it by saying that he picked up some fresh fruits to make more juice. The next day, they get back to trading their way out of the forest and encounter a bunch of new things on their way. They find a lost girl from their group and enjoy some time playing in the river, and even get chased by a horde of orcs. However, in the end, they manage to get out of the forest, and it makes everyone really excited. Haruka notes that his vision is covered by the hills in the area, and he notices a new airwalk skill and his status screen. He uses it to fly up to get a better view of their surroundings and notices a party of NPCs from this world getting attacked by a pack of monsters. He gets down and tells the class up everything. Being the good leader that she is, she freaks out and says that they should help them. However, Haruka warns that there's no guarantee that the NPCs are actually good people. There is no way to know if they will hurt them once they save them from the monsters. He suggests they continue walking forward, but the class rep says that she will fight back if they try to hurt her classmates. She really wants to save them, so she looks at Haruka with shaky eyes. Because of this, Haruka says that he will go there on his own. They're too far away, and the others won't be able to make it even if they run at full speed. Haruka then uses physical enhancement and weight magic again, and then he casts wind magic to hit himself into the air. He then continues flying towards the NPCs using his airwalk skill. However, he notices the class rep hanging from his cloak, and he asked her what she's doing. She says that she got caught up in the wind magic and tells him to look in front of him as they're about to crash. Unfortunately, Haruka says that he doesn't know how to apply brakes. They both crash down on the monsters near the NPC party and end up saving them in the process. Haruka gets up, and the NPC's leader introduces himself as Ofter alongside his partner Gatek. They thank him for saving their butts and explain that merchants were being attacked by monsters on this route. Because of that, they decided to pick up the quest from the Adventurers Guild, hoping that they would be able to make some money. However, if the fight had continued, they wouldn't be alive right now. After that, they pack their stuff and Haruka waits for the other girls to catch up to them. While waiting, he cooks up some of his bush mushrooms and shears them with the NPCs. They thank him for it and revealed that the mushrooms are actually quite valuable. The mushrooms restore their strength and Haruka becomes jealous of the old dudes in the party for getting the chance to go on adventures with such hotties. Just then, the class rep comes back to her senses and stops Haruka from turning into a villain. The other girls eventually catch up and they become really excited to see real-life elves. The NPC show them the way to a town called Omui, and the girls start running towards it excitedly like some kindergartners. On the other hand, we see the delinquents grinding up some levels in the forest. They say that it's about time they take revenge from the girls and have their way with them. However, the nerd that they kidnapped suggests that they first get their puppetry and mesmerize skills unsealed. The delinquents all agree and they decide to hunt a nerds group first. At the same time, the jocks look at them from behind some trees and become worried about them making their move. On getting to Omui town, it appears that the girls are unable to hide their stinky, lousy personalities. They soon arrive at the market and cannot stop looking at everyone in surprise and admiration. It is as though they had never seen a fellow human before in their past world. The class rep seems satisfied with the fun-filled environment and warm welcome. As the girls get themselves buried and distracted with the valuables of the city, the class rep reminds them that they still have stuff to do. Despite this, they still stupidly fantasize about how the buildings look like cakes and how they are attractive and might be edible. Their class rep quickly saves them from going crazy as she affirms that the buildings are not edible. The class rep calls out for Haruka, who on the other hand is chilling with a coconut drink under a shield. She gets very upset and storms towards his direction to scream out her lungs. After this, summons the girls in a jiffy with a whistle and then instructs them on how they would firstly be visiting the Adventurers Guild to register as adventurers, after which they would sell off everything they have acquired so far and then settle in an inn. She also hopes that they can find their missing classmates. Later that day, they arrive at the Adventurers Guild and on getting there, Haruka almost pees his pants when he is told that the guild boss had summoned him. On arriving at the room, he is first stunned by the hefty appearance of the guild master, and then his heart melts like candy when the guild master thanks him for saving the adventurers. Following this, he takes all the magic gems they had obtained to exchange them for money. The receptionist is thrown off balance when he first empties the items they had retrieved. They appear to be items worth a lot of money. The psychopath screams harshly at him out of excitement and surprise, and eventually ends up begging him to wait till the next day. He agrees to this, and then the girls who had just registered as adventurers approach him to give him the update since they have the required skill. He decided to give it a shot as he heads straight to the registration counter. However, poor Haruka is unable to register as an adventurer due to his low stats. He retired to bed that night with a very heavy heart. Seeing that Haruka is heartbroken, the class rep takes it upon herself to lead them to their lodgings. On getting there, they are welcomed with extreme warmth in a big compound that is divided into sectors. They settle in for a good night's rest, and while everyone is asleep, Haruka admits that beds are cozy, but he misses the wood. Shimazaki, on the other hand, stares outside the window, missing the nerds. On the next day, while they settle to have breakfast, they talk about how safe the town is and how there are a lot of shops around. Meanwhile, Haruka thinks of returning to the woods once he gets paid for his crystals, seeing that the girls are now safe. However, on the next day they are paid a little bit less for the items they had tendered for exchange. Just as Haruka tries to talk, the guild master shows up and apologizes to him, saying that although they do not have enough cash in the guild, they can work around paying installmentally without much thought to it. Haruka agrees immediately. He hands him 8 million coins, instantly processing the needs that the money can fix. Haruka almost goes crazy with happiness. They decide to do some shopping with the money. One of the guild adventurers then volunteers to lead Haruka to a place he would love. However, the moment our loner boy hears the word love, he begins to paint different mischievous pictures in his head until class rep's interruption. He tries to get the thought out of his head until he finally gets to the place he is supposed to love. On getting there, he throws a fist when he finds out that it is just an old weapons store. He wonders if the adventurer lacks common sense. Meanwhile, it is the other way around. Haruka is dumb and does not see the need to purchase any weapon to aid his leveling up. He manages to examine some of the wares and begin to understand the use of each item. Just when he plans to purchase some specific items, His plans get ruined, and then he ends up mistakenly combining items that are worth more than the amount of money he had made from the crystals. The store owner begins to shed crocodile tears until Haruka begs him to take every single dime he has earned. Having given all his 8 million coins to the store owner, he returns to the inn. On the next day, he is sick with worry and tries to think of a way to earn more crystals. However, outsiders are not allowed in and out of the town, except if they are adventurers or they have a pass. He had also lost his chances of sneaking out with the girls because they did not trust him to return to the city with them, as his stupid brain was all about the woods. Having thought about his decision for several minutes, he decides to activate his invisibility cloak and then sneak out of the city unnoticed. However, while he sneaks out and almost jumps over the city wall, he is stopped by one of the girls and ends up hitting his rod on the brick wall. He is unable to recover from the pain for a while as he pins himself on the ground for several minutes. They soon see the girl who always likes to strip herself private in public unconsciously. They try to stop her from looking like a newly created Eve. Later that day, all the girls leave for their second adventure, leaving only Haruka behind. He sees this as an opportunity to escape as he activates his invisibility cloak and runs out very swiftly. On his way to the woods, he sees a girl in trouble as she is in a carriage being attacked by a group of bandits. He debates in his heart to either help or leave, and just as he turns to leave, he is bothered by one of the bandits. This gets him pissed and he opens fire on them. Following this, the girl whose name is Marielle is saved. In the bid to express her gratitude, she decides to take him to her father against his own will. To make things worse, her father happens to be the duke of the city he had just fled from. He screams to be let out of the carriage as it moves, but she insists that her savior must be treated nicely. Meanwhile, in the woods, the delinquents have now met physically with the jocks and they are now in a crazy confrontation. It is clear that a battle line has been drawn and the jocks are hell-bent on protecting the girls. From this serious encounter, one of both parties gets stabbed. Angry that a member of the jocks just killed one of them, the delinquents charge forward and also kill one of the jocks. This continues until they almost wiped each other off existence. However, a greater force appears to wipe all the delinquents while the remaining jocks flee the environment. However, even their race does not pay off because the strange man uses magic to teleport himself to their supposed destination. Meanwhile, Haruka is still stuck in his unfortunate encounter with Marielle and her desire to show him to her father. After a while, they eventually arrive at the palace. She tells him to wait downstairs while she changes her dress. However, before she gets back, he attempts to escape, but she catches the unlucky jerk. This is because he had given too much thought to his escape instead of just carrying it out. She accuses him of trying to leave and tells him to sit for dinner. Haruka's eyes open wide when he sees the delicacies in front of him. The glutton cannot wait to destroy the barriers in front of him. Coupled with the food, she gives him a free pass in and out of town and also gives him a large amount of money. He soon stops listening to her blabbing and digs straight into the food. The following day, he is queried by the class rep and her girls, but they are unable to get details of what occurred the previous day while they were out. They leave urgently to hunt crystals from killing monsters. Haruka, who already has his own secret plans for the day, bids them farewell, but just before they leave, the class rep warns him never to leave town for the woods, and then they leave. Having finished up with them, he puts on his invisible cloak immediately and leaves for the woods, swearing to never help any carriage in danger. On getting to the woods, he checks out the mushrooms and the fishes in the river. It appears that he misses the environment a lot. He soon goes deeper into the woods where he sees something strange. Following this, Haruka looks closely at the substance on the floor and sees that it is blood. It gets worse when he is able to trace the little pint of blood to a large pool of blood. His heart breaks when he sees that the dumb jocks are the ones who own the blood. He is alerted, and in response to this, he heals them the moment he finds out that they are still breathing. After regaining consciousness, they explain their bitter ordeal to him and tell him about the strange man that had wiped them off because he is in search of the class rep for her special powers. They beg Haruka to save them from his wicked claw. Although he wants to be alone, he is also worried about his classmates and class rep. He agrees to fight with the strange man, but he would rather do it without their help. They are first shocked, but they decide to trust him as he might have a plan. It would have been great to have them by his side while they fight the psychopath together, but he might end up injured, a large number of them. To avoid this, Haruka tells them to hide so that they can at least protect the girls in his absence. Following this, he begins to think and work on ways he can level up his skill. On a fateful night, he sits in the dark, somewhere in the woods, trying to measure up his power against the unknown enemy. Coincidentally, he sees a group of goblins and then decides to take them down immediately so he can level up. In a jiffy, he eliminates all of them. However, as he turns to leave, he is attacked by a greater goblin. Seeing that it will help him level up, he tries to take it down and eventually defeats it after much effort. Following this, the Goblin Emperor with the highest level shows up. Haruka can see death staring at his dumb face, but he remains unruffled and tries his best to kill the Goblin Emperor. Having beaten him, blue-black Haruka still does not relent. He takes a few steps back after a serious attack and then strikes the Goblin Emperor, once sending him to hell. His stats increase immediately, and after that day he keeps looking for a way to level up. Having leveled up from 9 to 11, he is happy even if he still has a long way to go. On the evening of the next day, he finally encounters the long-awaited enemy, and to his surprise, it turns out to be Tanaka. Unknown to them, Tanaka has been deliberately indulging the delinquents to carry out his long-term wicked plan. Haruka is frustrated when he finds out that the stupid four-eyed idiot is responsible for the death of some of their classmates and the delinquents. Tanaka ignores him and wonders how the dumb jocks managed to flee the woods in their weak state. He turns to leave since he had no business with the loner, but Haruka stops him and accuses him of messing with his loved ones. He claims that even loners have people they care about. Meanwhile, the dumb jocks already met with the class rep and the remaining girls. It is at this time that they learned that Haruka is in the forest fighting. While their heart is sick with worry, Tanaka prepares to kill Haruka for getting in his way. Following this, he strikes poor Haruka, immediately causing the earth to ruffle vehemently against. Tanaka points out that he could not acquire the leftover skills in the White Room during their teleportation because it seemed like crap. He laughs at Haruka for thinking he stands a chance against him with such smelly god-forsaken skills. Following this, he strikes Haruka again after reducing his chances of saving himself with magic. Back in town, class rep finds it difficult to get the news of Haruka fighting alone in the woods off her mind. She tries to leave, but the jocks stop her, immediately assuring her that Haruka has things under control. Meanwhile, back in the woods, although he is very weak, he tries to save himself from every dangerous attack from Tanaka. His body seems stiff and he can hardly move properly. Seeing that Haruka is not completely weak, he decides to go harder on him. He pauses for a second and asks Haruka when he had started suspecting him. Haruka then states that it is quite obvious that he had something up his sleeve because it is strange for a loner like him and a mathematics genius to group up with troublemakers. Tanaka had always thought he was just a stupid bookworm. He never knew Haruka had a bit of smartness in him. Following Tanaka's question, Haruka demands to know when he started planning his wickedness. Apparently Tanaka had missed out on hijack skills aside from every other skill. Furthermore, he had things all figured out, and as soon as he got his interference skills, he decided to use it on the delinquents so as to use it against them later. Following this, he attacks Haruka powerfully and tries to blast him off with a fierce fire attack. However, to his surprise, Haruka absorbs all the fire energy almost immediately. Tanaka finds it hard to believe his eyes. While he is in confusion, even Haruka is also in confusion because he doesn't really understand how the absorption works. He soon remembers the magic weapons he had combined by mistake in town that had cost him a fortune. This must have been the source of his defense. Following this, while Tanaka's stupid mouth is wide open instead of his eyes, Haruka attacks him, but he is quick to build a defense. Following this, he brings out different weapons, fortifying it with magic, and then proceeds to rip Haruka into pieces. He almost kills Haruka with his different attack patterns, and while he is not watching, he hits him with a very crazy magic which sends him flying and hitting a hard surface. Haruka manages to stand up with the support of his staff while Tanaka watches with delight. It is at this time that Haruka figures that Tanaka must have copied and combined everyone's skill in the class. Having said this, the stupid psychopath is unable to deny his wicked sorcery, knowing that he plans to take the class rep skill and then use it to steal any other skill and acquire all to himself. Unknown to him that Haruka had already accessed his ability and how he cannot use the same skill for more than 3 times, he tries to attack him. It is at this time that Haruka points out his trick. Although the idiot is very hurt, he tries to maintain his sanity and still continues to attack Haruka with his best skill. To end him, he uses his most valuable skill, which is the death skill. The moment it hits Haruka, he falls to the ground, immediately pretending to be dead. The moment Tanaka sees that he is glued to the ground and without life, He plays with his head and leaves after laughing out loudly. However, he had only taken a few steps when Haruka's voice stopped him from moving any further. He almost loses his cool when he sees that Haruka is alive. Apparently such a skill did not work on him because he is different from the others. Tanaka finds it hard to hide his irritation. After cursing Haruka out of pain, he tries to attack him again, but Haruka blocks it effortlessly. He gets even more frustrated as they both clash magics. Thinking he had gotten Haruka, who only goes silent for a while, he sighs in relief, but soon goes crazy on hearing him talk again. It's as though he can no longer stand Haruka's existence. He remembers how boring classes used to be and how his classmates are too dumb to reason like him. When the teleportation happened, he did see it as something interesting, and there his quest to enjoy himself and grow stronger and better than anyone else began. However, all that is about to be ruined by a mere idiot with the worst skills. He strikes Haruka again out of envy and anger, and with this he finishes up Haruka for real this time, striking him with a sword that pierces through his skin numerous times. However, the good loner refuses to be taken down by the wicked loner. He is quick to heal himself and wakes up to slap Tanaka's face, stating that he is too full of himself. Haruka destroys him once and for all and then walks away casually. With this, Tanaka falls to the ground dead. While he walks away feeling very weak, he thinks of the class rep and everyone in town, probably waiting for his return. He apologizes to them in their absence and breaks down on his way, zoning out completely. However, before he loses his wretched, lonely life, the nerds show up from nowhere to help him. It appears that they weren't dead after all. They claim to have heard, when they returned to town, that he was alone fighting in the woods, so they couldn't delay their intervention any further. They all head back to town together, where he sees the rest of his classmates who welcome him warmly, and some of the girls forcefully drag him into the inn for a long bath. Following this, the proud girls finally get the chance to apologize to the nerds for picking a fight with them and sending them out of the camp. After this, all Haruka can think of is his wretched, lonely life. The class rep catches him again and tries to stop him from thinking of leaving. They all drag him back to be tied for a query of what led him to the woods. The next day, Haruka wakes up from a terrible dream. He is still tired from the fight he had with Tanaka. He yawns repeatedly and is first greeted by the nerds, who are off to attend to their daily quest. They bid Haruka farewell and then leave immediately. After they leave, Haruka praises himself for defeating Tanaka and finding the nerds. He then decides again to return to his useless mansion in the woods. After hearing him say this out loud, the class rep appears slowly behind him, fuming angrily. She insists on having a conversation with him, where she asked him why he had decided to do something so dangerous alone, even if they had scolded him the previous night. She hadn't done her personal scolding. Seeing the concern in her face, Haruka kneels immediately and apologizes for bothering her. He promises to never put himself in danger, such that she will get extremely worried about him again. Hearing this, she beams a smile and turns away immediately. After she leaves, Haruka is traumatized and desires to spend time alone with himself. Remembering what the nerds once told him about an item they had retrieved from the dungeon, he decides to get to the dungeon to get it for himself. They had told him that it can change people's minds and opinion about him once it is used. In order to make the girls comfortable with any stupid decision he sets out to the dungeon. Meanwhile, in the palace, Marielle's father is worried that they have less merchants to take down threatening monsters. In response to this, he subjects himself to excessive work towards resolving the problem. On hearing this, his daughter gets really worried about him, and to make things worse, a messenger who was initially sent to the dungeon bumps into the palace almost immediately to announce that there is trouble. Apparently monsters have already invaded the city from the dungeon. Hearing this, the Duke is at alert as he sends his daughter to alert the guild master. Meanwhile, Haruka, who is already on his way to the dungeon, bumps into a large number of strange goblins. He kills all of them for fun and heads straight to the dungeon, not minding the reason for their invasion. Class Rep, on the other hand, is summoned by the guild master as they prepare to rescue the city from the strange invasion of the goblins. It is at this time that she finds out about Haruka's absence. Meanwhile, the dumb-headed Haruka is having the time of his life in the dungeon. He begins to explore the items that he finds in a few boxes, but ends up not finding even a single thing that interests him. However, his mind wanders to the old store owner in town, who can help him discern the items that seem like mere junks. On his way back to the town, he is welcomed by questionable faces of the guild master, class rep, and the other's classmate. The moment she tells him about the invasion of the monsters, he tells her how he had killed a mob of them on his way out that day. Their mouth is all open wide as they find it hard to believe their ears. Haruka is commended but also scolded for putting himself in so much danger. The girls are very furious, and the guild master makes him promise to behave himself as they might be visited by something worse in the future. After making his promise, he retires for the night. However, on his bed he is worried that his loner life might be in great disaster, as everyone around him seems to be interested in him. He feels imprisoned because everyone is now keeping their eyes on him. The foolish boy decides to intensify his search for the item that will make people complain less about his actions and like him for the jerk he is. On the next day, he appears at the old man's store. However, the man feels like he is in another trouble since Haruka is the one visiting, so he begs him to leave before he gets them into another mess. Haruka calms him down and says he is only around to ask a question. He asks the old man about the item that can make people like him, and he is told about the pheromone ring, which is found somewhere in the nearby dungeon. He also gives him details of it being somewhere below the 50th floor, as no one has ever reached it. It appears that Haruka will be unable to retrieve it without defeating the floor bosses that appear on each floor. Haruka's secret soon gets out to the girls, who demand explanation from him immediately. They double-crossed him on his way to the dungeon, asking him why he wants to get an item that would make everyone overlook his mistakes. To cover up his intention, he lies and says something stupid, but class rep is too smart for his trick. They follow him forcefully to the dungeon when he runs off from them. On getting to the dungeon, he runs even farther from the girls, telling them to turn back. Class rep warns him to be careful, but the fool is quite too confident about his stats and ability to save himself from trouble. In a short while, his hand mistakenly breaks through a wall that sends him falling all the way to the 100th floor. Class rep tries to save him, but her efforts are not work. Again, our stupid main character would have been paralyzed but for the magic he uses to stop himself from landing brutally on the hard surface. Having landed in the last floor, he tries to make his way back to the previous floor, but he is unable to use any of his powers to achieve that. He accepts his fate and decides to find the boss of the last floor. Meanwhile, the girls set out to look for him because they are sick with worry. Haruka soon encounters a very powerful dark magic, which almost squeezes out his lungs. After this, he stands face to face with the dreaded most powerful boss of the dungeon, who is at level 100. It is left for him to either defeat the monster or end up dead. Back in the town, Marielle's father is sick with worry. She reads the trouble in her father's face after serving him his tea. It appears that dark clouds are already circling around the outermost dungeon at the time. She is worried that they might face something worse from the orcs' attack in the future. Her father tells her to send word to the Adventurers Guild, instructing them to prepare themselves in case of emergency. While Haruka attacks the idiotic monster severally but he is unable to harm it, he steps back and decides to critically access it for a while. He tries to attack the monster again, but it appears that the beast is faster than he is. He does this several times, about 1,000,000 times, but his efforts are futile. However, on one strike the monster ends him with a single sword attack. He is unable to stop the attack, but he activates his healing ability immediately. It becomes more difficult for Haruka to stay alive as his magic stamina is now wearing out. However, he still tries to take control of the situation. He sees something strange about the monster, and it's the calmness of the creature. It seems different from normal monsters, and it is not attacking him as he had attacked it from the beginning. He notices that this is because it senses no bloodlust. Haruka tries to attack it again, but he ends up losing track of his target and having the monster sword to his throat. Afraid that he might die, he steps back a bit, and for the first time the monster laughs. It is at this time that he figures out that the monster is being controlled to fight against its will. He cannot help but wonder what kind of creature he is really up against. They clash swords again, and this time Haruka seems a bit stronger, and then he drives away the force controlling the creature. Following this, he moves closer to the creature and tries to finish it off so as to save it from being tormented by any evil spirit. However, he stops because he is filled with compassion, and just after this, his subjugation skills come into play. Having set the skeleton free from darkness, they become a team. He double-checks its stats and sees that the creature once has a name, and it's a girl. He almost goes crazy because he already has enough girls. They proceed out of the 100th floor to another floor, which is the final floor. Here they come across the floor boss. Haruka is worn out and does not really seem interested in fighting. He tries to avoid the battle and tries to move away with magic, but things get even more complicated when it turns wrong. Two other monsters appear from a different floor. He ends up beating them up and retrieving crystals from them. He also gives the skeleton whose name is Angelica an armor he had retrieved. Meanwhile, his classmates are still looking for him. They are already almost halfway to the 50th floor and still haven't caught a glimpse of him. At this point, they mistakenly awaken a dangerous monster on that floor. Back at the town, the princess goes to report to the guild master about the dungeon and how she feels things might be going wrong with the place. The guild master assures her of safety and also promises that they are ready if anything crazy happens. Marielle tries to cheer herself up and decides to take back their message to her father. Back in the dungeon, Haruka tries so hard to figure out a way to defeat the enemy before him. The floor boss soon attacks him without a prior notice, and in response to this he resets his weapon and prepares to strike back. He attacks the floor boss immediately going by his little plan, but it appears that it is not enough to get it out of the way. He then decides to make a thin wall to block the obstruction with earth magic. Following this, he sets the ball rolling while they go deeper into the dungeon. He begins to sense another weird energy and is forced to immediately take cover. It appears that they had just encountered another boss. Haruka almost goes crazy, but he manages to stand up against the powerful tricky boss. They clashed swords for the second time and then he remembers. Angelica is also by his side. With this, he gives her a little magic and allows her to take on the monster. They soon destroy the tricky floor boss and then they head on to the next floor. Meanwhile, class rep and the girls are trying to take down the crazy monster on the 50th floor. They seem to be losing their minds, but the jocks summoned on courage and then take it upon themselves to defend the girls. They soon come together to come up with the best way to eliminate the monster. Following their agreement, one of the jocks uses his burst acceleration skill to make things easier while the rest of them also contribute to the damage. They all combine their energy while Kakazaki leads the fight. However, their powers all combined are no match the crazy beast as it throws Kakazaki off balance. Following this, they still manage to defeat the crazy creature, and after which they all cheer themselves. They proceed to look for him, and on the other hand he is also fighting some terrible and crazy monsters with his newly found Angelica. Meanwhile, the class rep is more than determined to find Haruka and vows to do so no matter what. On the other hand, Haruka continues to advance deep into the dungeon with Angelica in her shining armor. While they climb the stairs, there is a slight earthquake in the dungeon caused by a large number of monsters walking somewhere. This earthquake causes the guard of the dungeon to be pissed at the fact that the class rep and the other students charged into the dungeon. Even after he had warned them about the monster stampede going on, he worries that something might happen to them, not knowing that he is about to be a feast for rats. Fortunately for him, he doesn't fit into their menu for the day and they just run past him. Taking a look behind him, he sees some really creepy slime monsters who find him tasty. This causes him to freak the hell out. Scared for his sorry life, he runs as fast as he can to the Adventurers Guild to report the incident to the guild master. Hearing his pathetic story, the guild master realizes that the day for the monster stampede is finally upon them. At this time, a variety of monsters including large orcs, birds, goblins, and others marched towards the city. Looking at them, what type of monster would you think they don't stand a chance against? Let us know in the comments. Upon realizing that the monster stampede is now closer than ever, Marielle is extremely worried. The other adventurers are left wondering if the students are all right, but the guild master is left in thought. He eventually gets up to find an old text which has information about the dungeon. Looking through his shelf, he finds a scroll which informs them that dungeons are living things which spread lower with each passing floor. Furthermore, the scroll informs them that once the growth of the dungeon becomes so large, it becomes inhabitable for the monsters who begin to pout out of it. This, he explains, is what the stampede is about. I guess you're wondering what we can do about this. This was the same question on the minds of the other adventurers. Fortunately, the guild master lets them know that the stampede can only be stopped when the boss at the lowest level of the dungeon is defeated, which would lead to the death of that dungeon. Hearing this, they are left with an important question. Who the hell has the guts to defeat the powerful boss of the lowest level? With this question comes a dashing answer in Marielle's mind as a pretty dope image of Haruka pops up. Since the image was so cute, she waved it off immediately. In that moment, an earthquake hits the building and they realize that these monsters are now closer than ever. Realizing this, the guild master begins to dish out instructions. He orders Ofter to get the people to shelter and prevent them from panicking. Then Gatek is ordered to get the adventurers and guards to the front gate in preparation for battle, and to make sure the monsters don't get into the city. With the two gone, the guild master gets set to show the fans of this anime how he became the master in the first place. In the dungeon, Haruka is trapped at a spot with Angelica as the two hide from a flock of griffins flying around. To take them out, he sprays some poison on a fish and throws it in the air. The birds with bird brains jump at it and end up failing miserably to the ground. With this, he successfully passes this floor and heads down to the next. Meanwhile, the class rep and the others find themselves running for their dear lives while stuck on floor 54. They eventually get to a point where they are met by a large pack of werewolves. At this moment, they realized that they were doomed. Do you think they'll survive this? Let us know in the comments. Shortly after, we are left to the outsides of the city gates where some soldiers are left wounded. Seeing them in this state, Marielle realizes just how bad a monster stampede can be. She acknowledges that she has never seen such a huge number of monsters at once. Also, Gatek informs the guild master that they were successfully able to hold off the monsters for now and prevent them from going into the city. I believe you heard me say for now, right? Just then, off to remind Gatek about the kids who are still in the dungeon, but Gatek gets immediately worried that Ofter is thinking about using them to defeat the dungeon boss, even though he doesn't think the students stand a chance. The guild master acknowledges that Haruka could be able to pull this off. However, this could only happen if they can figure out a way to inform Haruka about the solution to the stampede. Due to this, they deliberate on who would go to inform Haruka about this. Without much thought, they all set their sights on Marielle, noticing that they are looking at her. She figures it's not because of her pretty face. Sensing the purpose, he immediately declines, pleading that they not let her go into the dungeon alone. She clearly isn't a fan of equality. Sensing that Marielle isn't cut out to be an independent woman, the guild master orders Ofter to accompany her. At first, he tries to bring up an excuse, claiming that they would need him in their next attack on the monsters, but the guild master lets him know that his weird goatee is no added advantage for them. With no other choice, he agrees to go. Later on, Haruka and Angelica arrive at a pond-like water world. While he admires the water, two fishes jump out of it to attack him. Fortunately, Angelica steps forward to strike them back into the water. Looking into the water, he realizes that the fishes are as scary as an angry mother. Since they were swordfish, their teeth were very sharp and figures that stepping into the water is not an option. Just then, he uses his ice magic to freeze them all up. When this happens, he is able to run past the water without any issues. Just when he thought he had got control of the fishes, the angry grandma in the form of a very large fish almost swallow him. It hits him into the water and is almost about to attack Angelica when he comes charging out of the water on a surfboard. After that, he comes flying in the air and lands on the fish's forehead with his stick, causing it to pass out. Haruka is brimming with confidence as he is easily navigated through the dungeon so far. He honestly can't believe how weak the monsters are here and wonders if he'll ever face an enemy in this place that will provide even a mild challenge. He reaches floor 79, where he comes across a statue adorned with a rare ancient relic. The relic is called the Ring of Boundless Fortune, and just as the name suggests, it brings happiness and repels misfortune for its user. It also significantly boosts the user's luck, and although Haruka's luck stats are already quite high because he's the main character, he happily claims it for himself. Later, on the 77th floor, he bursts through the walls like a hero and enters a secret room where he finds a Bengal relic inside a treasure chest. This relic is especially noteworthy because it carries the blessing of sublimating disaster, so Haruka gleefully adds it to his inventory as well. He then encounters a level 100 necromancer on floor 75 and defeats it with a simple fire spell, acquiring a necromancy jewel from its loot drop. So far, the rewards have made Haruka quite happy, and he expresses how much he is enjoying his dungeon life as a loner. With his current luck and skills, he feels no need to equip any of these relics, so he wonders if he should sell them all at the marketplace to get rich instead. However, he then remembers that he has to make up to his new friend Angelica here, so he offers the relics to Angelica, hoping to make her happy, as he suspects that she might be still upset after being cursed by the darkness. Haruka takes the blame for making her put on the cursed armor and tells her that he wants to make it up to her, which is why he is giving her all of these relics to her. She hesitates to take any at first, but then Haruka entices her, saying that these are all fashionable items and will make her look more appealing to us others. So she takes it all reluctantly, and having received such special treatment from this strange loner, the dungeon boss, who I should remind you once was an ugly skeleton, becomes filled with what we call love. It is pretty clear that she has been charmed by the unintentional Riz Lord, but Haruka himself has no idea about her growing feelings. Having only expertise in adventuring, he sets off again to look for more secret treasure rooms, leaving the mysterious dungeon boss Angelica behind. She takes off her helm for a moment to take a breather, revealing her luscious blonde hair before putting it back on again to join Haruka, hiding from him that she is no longer a skeleton. Meanwhile, Haruka's classmates led by the class rep are on the 54th floor and have wiped out all of the werewolves on that floor. The class rep makes sure that all the girls are alright before moving ahead and notices how exhausted most of them are feeling. She decides to give the group a rest, but they don't want to waste a single second here, as they are all determined to rescue Haruka. As the dust clears up, After and Marielle join the class reps group as well and explain that they are here to request Haruka to put a stop to this anime's rumbling. But since they have no idea where Haruka is, they all try to figure out a way to contact him. Going back to Haruka's perspective, the floor is literally lava and Haruka must pass through the narrow path to get to the other side. He uses his spatial awareness and traps detection skills to scan the surrounding area and comes to the conclusion that this floor is also filled with traps. So he carefully steps on the scorching hot floor and makes sure not to trigger any traps. Even then, he trips over a rock and almost falls into the lava, but his dependable Lady Knight gracefully grabs him and saves his life. Since she can't speak officially, she points at the corner where there is a small empty space cozy enough to make a camp, and she essentially wants Haruka to take a rest there as he is quite worked up. He agrees that he should take a breather and sits down, expressing how much this floor is wearing him out because preserving energy has become a bit of a problem. Haruka wonders if there's any way to boost his stamina. He looks at the campfire and seeing the flickering flames, he realizes that wind magic might help him reduce the heat. With the brilliance of his mega mind, he comes up with a plan and uses his wind magic to stir up a light breeze, conditioning the air just enough to give him some relief. The wind passes through a hole in the wall carrying his voice and reaches another hole at the class rep's location above on the 54th floor. Both holes seem to act as ventilation shafts, which is why the sound waves pass through so seamlessly. Although it's barely audible, the class rep recognizes it as Haruka's voice and excitedly moves closer to the hole, confirming that it's him. Using the hole, she communicates with Haruka and he realizes that this must be the same hole he fell through. The class rep tells Haruka to climb up the hole, but Haruka has already tested that and failed. He asked her to throw down a rope, but unfortunately none of them have one. Both sides realize that manually clearing each floor is the only option for Haruka. The class rep mentions the dungeon stampede to Haruka and asks him to climb as quickly as possible to help the adventuring guild prevent a catastrophe. Marielle and After mention that the town has already been hit with the second wave of the stampede, and they suspect that if the third wave reaches it, the town will be destroyed along with its people. However, there is a shortcut to stopping this stampede since the stampede is generated from this very dungeon. If the dungeon's boss is defeated, the stampede will come to an end. Sadly, their only hope, Haruka has befriended the dungeon boss after defeating her. Haruka wonders what he should do. He finds himself in a dilemma where he wants to protect the townspeople and his new friend, but neither can survive if the other does. Haruka knows that Angelica too has suffered. She was held prisoner by this dungeon for hundreds of years all alone, and now that she finally has a chance to live a proper life, he can't bring himself to hurt her. So he tells Marielle and After that he hasn't finished off the dungeon boss and won't ever do it, but he also assures them not to worry, promising that he will stop the stampede without finishing off the boss since he's a trustworthy and dependable guy. The class rep chooses to believe him. She reminds everyone of how time and time again Haruka has saved and protected them, and she asks everyone to trust in that same Haruka once more. Will Haruka be able to save Angelica from this prison and ultimately add her to his harem? And with that, we have come to the end of this part. Stay tuned for next part. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates.